Welcome to the Manders Mindset podcast. Here you'll find both monologue and interviews of entrepreneurs, coaches, healers, and a variety of other people, where your host Amanda Russo will discuss her own mindset and perspective and her guest mindset and perspective on the world around us. Manders and her guests will help explain to you how shifting your mindset will shift your life.
Hey guys, Manders here. If you've heard a few episodes, you have likely heard me mention Meg, who referred me to Breathwork Detox, Meg, who mentioned Breathwork to me, Meg, who gifted me a trip to Bali. This divine woman who was probably a sister of mine in a past life, but so much love and inspiration in my life has come from this divine woman. And I am so thankful for y'all to hear her speak. Welcome back to Manders Mindset, where we explore the power of shifting your mindset to shift your life. As always, I'm your host, Amanda Russo, and I am honored to be here today with one of my favorite people in the world, someone I am blessed to call one of my friends, a mentor, and the woman who introduced me to Breathwork Detox, Meghan Escobar, Master Breathwork Detox Facilitator, the emotional anchor, the one and only. I am so excited to be here with Meg today. Thank you so much for joining me.
It's an honor. It's been long overdue for sure.
So who would you say Meg is at the core?
Ooh, that's a pretty good question. She's like, dive right in. I have to be honest, I'm still learning. I am somebody who really is since I started my healing journey, is just like always be a student, right? Always be evolving, always be creating. There could be a different version of myself that wakes up every single day, right? And even midday change. At my core, I would say that my purpose and my clear vision in this lifetime is to just lead with love and integrity. And service, right? It's like, what can I do to service and make an impact out here in the world and break cycles?
Now, can you take us down memory lane a little bit? Tell us about childhood, family dynamic, however you want to go with that.
Sure. Which, I think that ending what I just ended with is breaking the cycles, that runs deep into my core as somebody who is here to do that, right? Because childhood wasn't the greatest for me. I feel like we all go through trauma, right? Everybody goes through a form of trauma, and it's part of the human experience, and that looks different for everybody. But also, some worse than others. And I would say that childhood wasn't the greatest. Broken home, a single mom, dad in and out of our lives. Lost my dad at a young age. This June will be 7 years that he's been gone. Bad lifestyle choices, drinking, drugging, partying. She did her best with what she knew. I had a lot of resentment and anger towards her for a really long time. It wasn't until I was able to forgive her for my own sanity, right, that we have a much better relationship today than we ever have in life, right? I have an understanding of I'm sure she holds on to a lot and she doesn't know how to heal, right? And so accepting people with where they're at is a big part of my healing journey too, and understanding that, people only do with what they know, and so does that make it bad or good? It's a fine line, right? So, I feel like I was always loved, I always had a roof over my head, food on the table, right? But as a mom today, my version of love towards my son versus the love that I had growing up, it's a completely different version of love, So my goal in this lifetime is to break that cycle. So that way, the love and care and the emotional support that I have and give to my son, he'll take that and put it, the protection, the love, that type of thing he's going to carry on. and kind of break that cycle. And then also breaking the cycle of money restriction. We didn't grow up poor, but survived. There were times where we were on food stamps. There were times where my mom was really struggling with a single parent, 3 kids, all in diapers. Like I'm the youngest of, well, now 5, but the household that I grew up in was just me and my 2 older brothers. And we were all like 1 year apart. So my mom was 20 years old with 3 toddlers, 3 infants. And so she did the best with what she knew, right? Growing up, me and my brothers were really close. I got myself into a little trouble when I was like 16 years old and went away for a little bit. And that was a blessing because when I returned back into my home, my brothers had started to go down a dark path, drink and drug. Not that I didn't explore those avenues, I did, but I was a little bit more headstrong with not letting it control me to the point where I became an addict. I did a lot of exploring with just socializing, I guess, you know what I mean? Type of situation. Now, my brothers do suffer from addiction, alcohol addiction, drug addiction, and anger issues and, all that. That's another cycle that I want to be able to break because my father, by lifestyle choices, drinking, drugging, brothers went down that path. I definitely explored that path. And it wasn't until I found breathwork that I was able to break that cycle and to see through a clearer lens in life. That put me on my path of healing. So for the past 4 years into this journey, I've been focusing on going inward and healing the root to break that cycle,
Is your mom still alive?
Yes, she's alive. Yep. She still heavily drinks, but she's there. She's kicking. She could make better lifestyle choices, but hey, it is what it is. When I first started the journey into breathwork, there was a big controversy of me being in a cult, which is very interesting to me as a Catholic woman who goes to church. So, that we could go down a whole nother path with that, where breathwork being a cult, it just was mind boggling to me. And I'm like, I don't understand. I don't understand how that could be. But, it's people are so scared of the unknown. And at first it was very hurtful to me because I felt like I'm more tapped into my spirituality than you probably ever will be. And so the way that I've evolved as a daughter, why wouldn't you be happy? But instead, you're judgmental. And whereas that falls back into that mirror, right? Envious of maybe the person she'd like to be more of. And so learn to accept that. She's just kind of a closed-minded person, and that's okay.
Yeah. Like you said, accepting people where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you mentioned about having an impact and showing up with integrity and love. Have you always embodied that, even when as a kid?
No, I mean, I've always been like the rock. Like I was always the rock of the family. I would say like, make sure that everybody's okay, support everybody, put myself on the back burner. Real Cancer, like a real true Cancer. Always the mother type. Like growing up, I said me and my brothers were always close, but it wasn't just me and my brothers. Like we had our group of friends, like our entire group of friends. I was like Mama Meg. So I guess in a sense, love and integrity, but now I see that in a different way, in a different perspective, because love and integrity needs to come to you first. Right? It's like you cannot continue to pour into other people and say that you really love yourself because you're not putting yourself first. So that person kind of, I guess, led with love and integrity, but not in the right form.
Now, how was schooling for you?
I was great. I was like a nerd, actually. I got straight A's in school. I was always on the honor roll up until I got to middle school when I started to explore, like smoking pot and, hanging out with the cool kids. I got my first B, and that was frustrating, but it was also a lot going on at home where I started to like not really care. Like, fuck it. I don't care. I just wanted to hang out and party and be with people that, I guess, start to mask the pain.
Now, you said that was middle school?
Yep. And then from there, I was pretty much like an AB student. High school, I ended up, it's a really interesting story. So I grew up going to school in East Providence, like Pawtucket, East Providence area. And then when I was 16, when I got into that little bit of trouble, I had spent time in training school. So when I got home, I was like bouncing around schools because we moved like every year. We moved constantly. It was never like in one school for a long period of time. And then in 11th grade, my mom moved from city, East Providence, Pawtucket, Providence, to Rehoboth and put me in school in Rehoboth. You ever see the movie Mean Girls?
Yes.
Girl, that's what my life was like every single day when I went to school there. It was like very small town mentality, you know, where's this girl coming from the city, and like just felt like it was like an everyday fight to mean people, like just like kids can be shitty, right? And so kids can be pretty shitty, and you know there was just constantly a group of girls that would like say things to try to harass me. And I mean, you know me, yeah, you know, you've known me since my healing journey, but prior to that I was like, I grew up with boys. Fighting was like a thing, right? Like, so I didn't really, you know, there was fights. There was, you know, me always wanting to try to get out of school. And so when I went there, this was like right around 9/11 too. This is something I haven't really shared with publicly at all. So yeah, hear it out. So we used to get out of school all the time because people were writing bomb threats. Like every week there would be a bomb threat and we'd go evacuate the school like a fire drill. They would come and they would search and then we'd go home. I was like, shit, that's all we need to do. So yeah, I wrote a couple bomb threats. They did a handwrite. I did two out of like, who even knows how many were done. But they did a handwriting analysis and caught me and could have really exposed me, really exposed me. Thankfully, my stepfather's very well known in that area. So it didn't go to the papers. It didn't go public. Saved me a little dignity there. And I could never talk about it. I was so ashamed of that story because I was like, that's embarrassing as fuck. But at the same time, it's like, why did I do it? Why did I do it? Because I was so unhappy. Like I did not want to be. I was willing to do whatever I could do just to get out of school. One time my mother dropped me off and I walked all the way home. I was like, I told her I'm not walking into the school. She's like, I'm dropping you off. I walked all the way home in a snowstorm and I lived probably about 6 miles away. That's so much I hated that school, okay? So I had an opportunity at that point to go to a private school or quit. And I quit. I was like, I don't really care. I'll just go get my GED. So I got my GED and went to college, got my bachelor's degree and, you know.
Okay. And where'd you get your bachelor's degree?
And Long Island, New York. So I went there. I started there. I didn't start college until I was 21. I went to a small private college in Suffolk County. It was in the town of Patchogue in New York and in Suffolk County. And then there was another site in Queens, but I went to the one in Long Island. It was beautiful, small, not like a big university or anything. It was a really small little college. Yeah. Got my bachelor's in business management and ended up meeting my son's father there. My son was actually born in New York. And then we moved back home when he was about 6 months. Things didn't work out with me and baby daddy.
And so, about how old were you when you graduated with your bachelor's?
I was 25 and I was pregnant. I was about 6 months pregnant when I walked the stage with my little baby boy. And yeah, so I was 25 when I had him. Yep.
That's impressive that you were able to graduate and get your degree even when you were pregnant.
Yeah, I worked I worked a full-time job while in college full-time and a part-time job. I was a hustler.
So you have your son, and then where did life take you from there?
So we moved back home to Rhode Island when he was about 6 months, and I got into my first sales job. I got into life insurance and investments. I worked for New York Life. When I first got home, I got licensed in life and health, and then took my I don't even remember what it was, 63 or whatever it was, to do like annuities. I was with New York Life for probably a good 5-6 years before I ended up transitioning into more of an independent broker. That was really cool. So I did direct sales for probably like the first 3 years into that industry. And then I ended up doing more of management practice, like doing all the paperwork side of things.
How long
Yeah.
did you do that for?
I was in that industry for probably good. Oh, no, Daniel's 15 now. I got out. I would say a solid 12 years. Solid 12. Yep.
So you
Do little gigs here and there, like bartending and, things like that. But that was pretty much my career.
okay. And now 12 years. So did you enjoy it?
I did, because it allowed me to have a lot of flexibility. It was like, so the guys that I was like, the practices that I managed, most predominantly men, they were really easygoing. And I was always that type of person where 9 to 5, it didn't work out. I tried it a few times, like working for my stepdad's company. And I did payroll and billing for a trucking company for a little while in between when I thought I wanted to lead the industry. I did that for like 2 years, and I was like, I'll go back to doing what I was comfortable with. And I think mostly it was just because I was comfortable with it. It was good money, I had flexibility, but it wasn't something that I absolutely loved and was so happy about going to work every day, No, it was more so the flexibility and just being able to come and kind of go as I please, as long as my job was done. So that was cool.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I'm sure that sounds nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even if you didn't love it, like the flexibility definitely makes a difference to affect the rest of your life,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So you left there, and then what?
So I left there. I went on my journey to, like, I think a lot of people, kind of explored different things during COVID. Once COVID hit, I, you know, actually found breathwork right about that time. It wasn't shortly after that I did my first virtual breathwork session with Curtis, who, is now a mentor of both of ours. He's also a good friend. I've known him for quite a while. I knew him before he even got into breathwork, but that's another story for another day. So I ended up trying it. Obviously we were friends on social media, and I had seen him promoting this thing, and I was like, I maybe really want to try this. And this was also about 1.5 years after my father had passed, and I still hadn't like fully grieved him, So I had a lot of anger. I was in a really, really dark place, to be honest with you. I was getting high, doing, hard drugs, like drinking every day, started getting into doing like cocaine and, all of that shit. And it was just, I was basically going down the same path that dad did, So I was like, this is just not healthy. I was a mom already at that point. So I'm like, knowing I'm not giving my son the best version of me. And so one day I was like, you know what? I'm just going to fucking try this thing. I'm going to try this new thing. I rented a hotel room, tried it, and completely shifted my life. I was like, wow, like the power that we have inside of us is absolutely incredible. I'm somebody who was always very naturally intuitive, and common sense came very easy to me. And I know that's something that a lot of people don't have. So when I had gone through that experience, it was just such an eye-opening experience to me that we are meant for so much more than what we give ourselves credit of. Especially in the way that I grew up, where it was just like, you got a skill, you got a career, like there wasn't any the magic. And that's what I like to look at it as magic, and that's truly what it is. So carried on to continue to practice, every time that he would hold an event. Now, mind you, this is also during COVID. Nobody really travels. I didn't listen to that stuff. I actually did a lot of traveling throughout that entire time. Girl, I was in Puerto Rico, New York every other week. I went to Florida a couple times. So I was doing my thing. And then when things started to open up, he had announced his first in-person event in Miami. And he was co-hosting with Brett Lockett. And so I was like, oh, another excuse to travel? Hit up my cousin. I was like, hey, want to go to Miami and do breath work? And she's like, sure. Because the cost of traveling during that time was so freaking cheap, So went out there, did my first breathwork session in person. And I knew at that point in time that I wanted to host. I wanted to facilitate. I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to go deeper inside and learn more about myself. I'm a Master Breathwork Facilitator and I absolutely love it.
So I want to backtrack really quick. You rented a hotel room for your first virtual breathwork session?
Mm-hmm.
What made you do that?
Well, no, thanks for asking. So that was actually a point in my life where I had to make some sacrifices, where I had to go move into my grandmother's house because financially I wasn't I decided to leave my job. I didn't really have a plan, but I knew I wasn't happy. And so I got into CBD. So I started a business with my friend, Wicked Lit. I don't know if you remember that.
I do.
Okay. So we started that and we had these big visions, and that isn't really alive anymore, but that's another story also. So why did I rent a hotel room is because I didn't have the space. I was sharing a bedroom with my 11-year-old son in my grandmother's basement. So I needed privacy. I didn't know what to expect or experience, as we know, like, you don't know, right? Even with the preparation and everything, you still have no idea what you're in for. But I knew something inside of me, that natural intuition was like, no, if you're going to do this, girl, you need to give yourself some space to download it. Thank God, because after my experience, I had the whole entire room to myself where I was like, wow, what just happened? So that's why I did that.
Now, what made you decide to try it?
I just knew something needed to change in my life. I was at a really dark place and I knew it's not what I wanted for my life. Me knowing that I wasn't being the best for my son. And I didn't want this vicious cycle to continue. My brothers have already gone through a couple of OD situations. My son seeing one of my brothers OD, seeing my father OD. So it was like, I do not want this to continue. I do not want this in my life. And if I want to make what you're not changing, you're choosing. So I made a decision to start to do something that I never did before, to do something uncomfortable, right? Because what I was doing wasn't working. So I needed to see a different version of myself.
No.
And I know Curtis, right? Like I said, you know what I mean? I knew him as a person before he had gotten into this. I first met Curtis when he wrote his first book. And we just kind of stayed connected. And he was just somebody I really looked up to. And, that when I read that book back then, it's kind of what started me originally. But I was also still so caught up in the street life. I was also selling drugs at the time. So, you know what I mean? I sold drugs for a long time without ever doing them. And then I tried it once. It wasn't a good thing. So, yeah, I needed a change. And it sure did. You know what I mean? And that was something that I feel like still even to this day, some people, I don't know. It's like, and this is probably just me, right? But like thinking, what are the words that I'm looking for? Imposter syndrome, right? Because a little bit of that version is still not dead inside of me. Like, do people see that side of me and don't, believe or think I'm qualified to hold the space that I hold, Even though outside validation isn't necessary, it's still something that crosses the mind. It's years of conditioning, girl.
I get that. That makes sense. And now, how long after your first virtual did you go to Miami for I am so booked. I never knew you did that. I never knew.
Yes. Yep. It was probably about a year into me practicing. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Just showing up to the virtuals. Yeah. It was about a year. Mm. Yeah. And I needed any reason to travel. I was out.
Oh my gosh. So you did an in-person breathwork session. Did you notice any difference?
Oh, yeah, completely. I mean, don't get me wrong. Virtual is, clearly as effective, but there's nothing like human connection. There's nothing like it. You can't, even this right here, this is beautiful, but you know very well that if you or I were in the same room, it would be that more impactful, right?
Yeah.
Because we understand energy. And although there's no time and space really, there still is something different about the human connection and actually feeling the energy of everybody else in that room. Yeah. I just felt so called to be that space holder. Like I think a big part of it was that my cousin came with me and she had done like 1 or 2 sessions virtually with me at that point. She wasn't as into it as I was, but she had done a couple of sessions. And I think just seeing some of the breakthroughs that she had gone through and me being able to kind of lead her down that path, I just knew that I could do this for so many other people.
So was it
because it's lack of knowledge, just educating people.
So was it after the in-person session that you got certified?
Yep. It was after that I signed up to the very next teacher training, which was only his second one.
And now where did you do teacher training?
So it's interesting. So when Curtis first launched teacher training, his very first class was with Liz and a couple of other girls that are still a part of the community. But he did level 1. And then he had launched level 2. Level 1 was in Utah. And then he had launched level 2 was in Miami, actually, oddly enough, in the art district area. I don't know what happened. He was allowing people to come in and do the in-person level 2, even if you didn't complete level 1. And then you would just do level 1 online. So I ended up going and it was level 2 training that I trained in first. And then I had the option to do level 1 on virtual or to just attend the next one. And that third one that he did is when he combined the 2. He did level 1 and level 2 in one training. Right. So I actually ended up going back to Utah the very next one and I did the full training. So I basically went through level 2 twice.
Now, I want to transition a tad. You've talked a lot about cycles you've wanted to break and you've gone through a lot of shifts in your life. And this is actually a topic you touched upon a little bit in the Breakfast Club. I don't know if you'll even remember this, but I do. And you talked about changing other people or changing yourself. And I'm curious your thoughts on if we can change other people or if we can assist other people in changing.
Yeah. So I think I remember the session that I did where I talked about, you can't. I don't believe that you can change people. Like, you can give people advice, kind of like that old saying, you can lead a horse to the water, right? But ultimately, it truly needs to be the other person's decision. And I think a lot of us really struggle with expectation because, from somebody who I feel like, I'm in a leadership position pretty much I lead breath work. With my job now, I do remote sales. It's coaching. It's being a leader, right? Being able to lead people to make their own decisions. So can you not manipulate, but can you persuade someone to make a better decision for themselves or a worse decision, depending on what you're selling, right? But can you persuade somebody to make a decision that they probably wouldn't be able to make on their own? Because one thing I've learned in sales, and in this sales position, there's a lot of things I learned in this sales position that I didn't know when I was in insurance and investments. They need to restructure their trainings. But, to be a master salesperson, to be a leader in the sales world, it's about language and it's about asking people questions. It's more so a lot of what we do is even self-talk therapy, right? People don't really know what they want or need, right? It's like, I don't know, the Ford guy, right? What did he say? If he asked everybody what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse, right? They didn't know they needed a vehicle until there was one that was created, right? So one thing that I've learned in a leadership role in this position is that even us, like sometimes we don't really know what we want. Like you take 10 people, random people, and ask them this one question. What do you want out of life? And this is an exercise that we've gone through, right? What do you want? You'll get random answers, but the ultimate truth is nobody really knows. I mean, some people have a vision and a plan and a goal, but that could also change, right? So I don't think that we ever really know what we truly want because of the great choice, right? Because we always get to make a different decision. We always get to make a different choice if we want to. The most important thing in life is now and being present, and that's something that a lot of people struggle with. Constantly in the past, constantly in the future, right? Worrying about things that haven't even happened yet, or, going back into things that have already happened.
I get what you mean. So even though you went through a lot of changes in your life, you think that's because you wanted to make that change?
100%. Yeah. It had to be me to make the decision to, otherwise who knows where I'd be right now.
But you don't think Curtis had influence in that because you tried his breathwork?
Oh, yeah. I mean, he definitely had influence in it because he facilitated that, right? If he didn't find his calling and put it out there and promoted it, of course, who knows? I probably would have never been introduced to breathwork. So I'm super grateful for him being the person that he is and being so strong-willed and diving deep into this, making his company the way that it is today, or being who he is today. Because without him, I probably wouldn't even know what breathwork was. Maybe, but probably not, because the only reason why I did it was because I knew him, trusted him, liked him. No like trust, right? So, yeah, I mean, I would say he had a lot to do with it, but ultimately it was my decision to make the change that I needed to make for myself.
I get that. So we can't change other people. We can maybe influence them positively or negatively.
Absolutely. But it's got to come from within. And, perfect example of like, I'll use my brother. Brothers, there's been multiple times that they've gone to rehab, got clean, did their, detoxing, and would go, as long as a year or more with being on the sober train, and then make a decision, something bad happens in life and you clutch back, but like you made that decision. No matter how many times that so it's like you've made the decision to become sober, to try to live a better life, but then something inside of you, product of your environment probably, right, that you made a decision to go back, knowing what version of your life is better because you've experienced both already. Now, what would be the reason of the decision? Why did that? What inside of you made that decision to go back? That's something I feel like I struggle with. I don't understand that.
I get what you mean. My cousin went through his fair share of drugs and then rehab, and he's better, and then the relapse, and yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a vicious cycle. And so, like, if I didn't try that new thing with somebody I knew, liked, and trusted, I could very well be on the same path. But I made a decision for myself to do better because I knew better. Right?
I'm just curious. Do you consider addiction a disease?
I think we all have an addiction to something, to be honest, and it's just, is it good for you or is it bad for you? Like you love to go to the gym. Maybe that's an addiction for you, but that's not a bad thing, right? So like addiction as far as like drug addiction, I mean, I don't know. To be honest with you, no, I don't. I think it's a choice.
Yeah.
I truly believe it's a choice. And this is, I know like a lot of people, this is an argumentative topic, but we all have the freedom of choice, right? So it's okay for me to have that choice. I'm not judging somebody who says that it is a disease because that's their truth. My truth is I've been in the situation where I feel like I could have very well fallen into addiction. And I have. I was there. I was at a point where I was getting high every fucking day for over a year. So yeah, I know that that's an addiction. I was an addict at that point. I made a choice to not continue that life cycle. I made a choice to stop. So if it was a disease, would I be able to recover from it on my own without medication or help or therapy? Right? Because a disease is it's a dis-ease in the body. How do you cure it?
Yeah.
Usually through medication, right? Or some form of
something.
Right?
Chemo.
Breathwork was my medication. Right. You know what I mean? Like breathwork was my medication. Right? Like people don't ask to get cancer or lung disease or Lyme disease. People don't ask to get that. That's something that happens, right? I feel like drug addiction is a choice. It's a choice you made. And so one thing that we learn very, very early on as human beings is right from wrong. What we can get away with, what we can't get away with, even as babies, man. You let a baby cry. If you don't let a baby cry, you pick it up every time it cries. Guess what? They're going to cry every time they want to be held because they learn that young. If I cry, I'm going to get picked up. We get taught what's right, what's wrong, right? No, don't do that. Don't jump on the table. All the right and wrongs we learn. And so, yeah, I think that it's a choice.
I agree. I've struggled with that back and forth a little bit because a lot of my family sees it as a disease. But, even that, before it becomes addiction, you make a choice to do it.
And we kind of know, like, we're kind of educated that what happens once you know what I mean? Like, I think everyone's gone to DARE, right? They tell you about drugs and alcohol in school, right?
Yeah. Like, even the word heroin. Like, I don't know all the specifics that can happen from it, but hearing the word, if somebody said to me, you want it, I wouldn't do it.
Right.
I couldn't name every single side effect of heroin, but I know
it's really bad for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, you want to go smoke you want to go smoke some crack? No, I don't. That doesn't sound fun.
I don't know how you say yes to that.
And there's like this part of me that I was at a spot in my life where I was doing cocaine every day for almost a year. Right. And I sold it for a really long time. So I know what it's doing to people. And I know it's like, doesn't look good. Like your skin looks like shit. You look greasy. You just don't look healthy. You don't look good. And so I do understand that when you're in that state of mind, it's easy to follow a path that you start to experiment other things because you're in that lifestyle, right? So there's a lot of people that I would party with today that are, have gone into heroin, have now, now are smoking crack, right? It's like because they made the choice to never step out of that lifestyle, and then it spirals. You want to explore new things. You want to get a different high, but you'll never get that first high back, ever. And I feel like that's what most people chase, right?
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It makes sense, though, when you mentioned about like that spiral after you try something.
Mm-hmm.
I think even as you mentioned earlier, like escapism. Granted, I would never do heroin, but even I have my history of alcohol, and a lot of it was escaping, and maybe that's how some of this starts with people. I still don't see it as a disease because you make that first initial choice,
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
I have empathy for it, but I don't see it as
empathy is different than compassion, though, right? It's like you can empathize because it's going back to the story of my mom. People do with what they know, right? And if that's all they know, it's hard for somebody to make a different decision. But also at the same time, it's like, okay, so what I struggle with is the revolving doors, the individuals that are constantly in and out of rehab, in and out of rehab. It's like, the choices that you continue to make and your insanity, right? It's insanity at that point. So yeah, it's definitely masking pain. And that's what's so beautiful about breathwork is because I didn't realize how much trauma that I had inside of myself that I was hiding from. That's the truth. It's like, and that's why people continue to stay in that spiral because they don't know how to heal themselves from the trauma or the pain that they're carrying with them. I just got chills.
Me too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Super fucking chills.
They don't realize that.
Mm-hmm. Because you have tunnel vision, right? You see one like this is fucking blocked. This isn't open. There's no peripheral. There's that's their life.
Yeah.
And it's kind of sad. And so I think I empathize with that concept of it. I was like, damn. And, there's obviously from the lifestyle that I came from when I first got into this, I was like, I want to take everybody with me, and it's something I really struggled with because it's like, I feel like, as my friend, how do you look at me and not see how happy and how much of a different person that I am today? Why wouldn't you want that? Right. And so then I would struggle with like, oh, like either, what you don't have enough trust in me that I'm going to invite something good in your life, or are you just really not willing to try something different? But I let that go. That was in the beginning stages of, my journey into building the practice. And then you learn very quickly that you got to find your tribe. You connect with like-minded people and the energy that you put out there is what you're going to attract. And so maybe some relationships and friendships aren't as strong as they once were, but, we evolve, we change, we grow, and that's okay. With love and light.
It's true. I kind of had a similar situation with how I discovered it. I wasn't doing heroin, thankfully. But even I jokingly talk about this, and I've said it a few times, like I went to your breathwork class January. It was the anniversary of my grandma's passing, and I didn't want to sit home and smoke weed. That's what I would have done. If I didn't go, I had no idea what the hell it was. You had been talking to me about it for a couple months, and I was like, okay, you got two choices. I'm either going to smoke weed by myself in misery, or I'm going to go to this breathwork class, even though I don't know what it is. Like,
and then I get to smoke after.
But you know what I mean? And it am I going to feel better from this? No. Do I know if I'm going to feel better from breathwork? At the time, I didn't know, but it was like, something's got to give.
Mm-hmm.
If nothing's working, it's not working. You could keep doing the same shit, but
yeah, what you're not changing, you're choosing, girl.
that right there is it.
And it's just like, life is just too short to not live in fulfillment. And I know that you can resonate with this, right? And I think a lot of people have this misconception of like, it doesn't mean every day is like a perfect day. You don't get, you don't get anxiety. You don't get stressed out. It's just like, yeah, hell, I do. I still deal with shit every day. We're human beings, right? We have emotions and we're supposed to. Our days aren't supposed to look the same, right? So there's not a pill for every emotion that we go through. It's called dealing with your shit, right? And so there's healthy ways to deal with your shit and there's unhealthy ways to deal with your shit. Breathwork is a really healthy way to deal with your shit. And that's a tool that I have now. When I am having a bad day and I'm stressed out and anxiety and I don't want to be social or I just want to sit in my house and I'm masking in my own shit, well, I can go do 10 minutes of breath work and shift my perspective and be a better person.
I love how you mentioned, though, all the emotions. It's not bad to feel not happy-go-lucky every single day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like,
I mean, you should majority of your days because life is too short to be unhappy and unfulfilled. But like, life be lifing.
yeah.
Life be lifing,
Yeah.
Back to like expectations. There are some things that people are going to do to disappoint you and frustrate you and throw your energy off and throw your game off, right? Because you have this expectation of who you want this person to be, or the choices that they make should be better choices because they need to be better persons for their children. They need to be better persons for themselves because you can be, right? And that is frustrating. That is frustrating. But it's not something that I let consume me anymore. Whereas like maybe the old version of me would, because I was that person who was always out there. What can I do for you? Can I open my door, even though I don't even want to right now? Right. So I've gotten really comfortable with saying no when I don't want to, when I want to say no. And like, okay, yes. When I want to say yes.
Is there anything that helped you with that? Breathwork?
Yeah. Because it was the first time that I started to realize in my life that I should put myself first. I should be fucking selfish. I should have boundaries. I shouldn't be available for everyone every time. Because I don't always have the energy. Constantly pouring and pouring and pouring. It's like my cup is fucking empty. So yeah, you start to learn your strengths and your weaknesses when you look inside yourself.
It's true. What would you say breathworks helped you with the most?
I say myself, like seeing myself. Really just tapping into that consciousness and the awareness of like everything is really so minuscule. Like everything, and like try not to take life so seriously. Like the moment is now. Take the risks. Take the risks. Do the things. Right. Book the flight, book the trip, even if you can't make it. Give it away, No, but like just being, and that right there, Amanda, like, I would have never done that. But like, I would have figured a way out. But I was like, this is a hard decision that I need to make. And as a mother, is it more important for me to be here for my son because things changed? Or am I just going to say, no, fuck that. I'm going to go to Bali. It just wasn't the time. Right. So it wasn't the time. And I'm okay with that because there will be another time. But like that version of like before I would have been like, no, he'll be all right. I'll figure it out. No.
So before Meg wouldn't have stayed to help him?
No. Definitely not.
So how did this shift in you?
Just realizing that I need to be a better person to myself for him. right? He's the reason, because it wasn't just about me anymore. No, I think my son was already he was already like 9 going on 10 at that point, when I realized that I had gone to, I was really not not in a good spot.
I get that. Now, have you heard of a man named Jay Shetty?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm a big fan, big fan. He's got a
Mm-hmm.
podcast called On Purpose, and he ends his podcast with 2 segments, and I end mine with them as well.
I love that. Yes, I have listened to quite a few of his good stuff.
Maybe you will be good at these questions. Everybody hates me for these questions here. The first segment is the many sides to us. There's 5 questions, and they need to be answered in 1 word each.
Mm.
What is 1 word someone who was meeting you for the first time would use to describe you as?
I would say fun.
Okay. What is 1 word that someone who knows you extremely well would use to describe you as?
Supportive.
What is 1 word you'd use to describe yourself?
Reliable.
What is 1 word that if someone didn't like you or agree with your mindset would use to describe you as?
Check yourself. If someone didn't like me, I would say mirror.
Why would they call you that?
I would say the word that they need to use is mirror, because if there's something you don't like about me, it's probably something that you don't like within yourself.
What is 1 word you're trying to embody right now?
Well, it's not just 1 word, it's 2, sorry, but it's just be. That's my mantra for 2025. To be present. To try to be my most present person this year. Really focus on the now.
Second segment is the final 5, and these can be answered in a sentence. What is the best advice you've heard or received?
I would say go with your gut feeling,
Why is that the best?
because it never steers you wrong. I can go back to different scenarios in my life where I didn't, and it wasn't the best choice.
That's fair. What is the worst advice you've heard or received?
I don't know. That's a really tough one. I would say what's coming to mind is just make it work, because sometimes things aren't supposed to work. And I've heard that quite a few times. Like, just make it work. Like, no, maybe it's not meant to.
Maybe it's not meant to. I like that. What is something that you used to value that you no longer value?
Other people's opinions.
If you could describe what you would want your legacy to be, as if someone was reading it, what would you want it to say?
I would, it's funny, I was just talking to Jasmine about this the other day. I would have to say the fact that I've been able to create an impact on people's lives. And I know that's one thing that I've read. It's like, people will forget something you say, but they will never forget how you made them feel. And that is something that I will honor. I mean, even, the gratitude messages that I've received from you over the last few years, and just, other people that I've been able to lead to in breath work, right? To see better versions of themselves and heal parts of themselves that they thought would never be healed. That is something that I am so, so, so proud of.
If you could create 1 law in the world that everyone had to follow, what would it be? And I want to know.
Oh, shit. Wow, that's tough. So many things come to mind. I feel like anybody who gets government assistance should be drug tested.
Why?
Because it's basically, government assistance is like other people's money, right? It's our taxpayers' money. majority, right? Like, it's not really the government giving you money, it's taxpayers' money. And if you need assistance, I get it. I have had assistance, and you shouldn't be using it for your leisure. You should be using it to survive. And, if you're using it for leisure, then that means you don't really need it, right? And typically somebody who gets assistance is a parent. And if they're using it for leisure, then they're not given to their children. Really important.
That's true. That makes a lot of sense. Well, thank you so much for speaking with me.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. And no pressure, but do you have any final words for the listeners? I always like to leave it back to the guest.
Sure. Just you don't want to live in regret. So do the things. Just do the things. Right. You never know if something's going to work for you if you never try, because you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take.
I love that. I had that on a bookmark when I was like 8 years old.
Love it. You embodying that shit now. Don't be
Very true. Well, thank you so much. And where can the listeners connect with you?
IG, you can find me at The Emotional Anchor. It's pretty much the brand right there. Facebook, Meghan Escobar. But IG is probably the best place.
And I will link that in the show notes for you guys to connect with Meg directly. And thank you so much again. I really appreciate it. What an incredible conversation with Meghan Escobar. I don't know about y'all, but I feel so inspired by Meg's courage, honesty, and the wisdom that she has gained throughout her journey thus far. There is something so powerful and magical about hearing someone share not only their wins and their successes, but all the messy middle in between. The parts where the real transformation and the real growth happens. So thank you and shout out to Meg for her authenticity in this episode. One thing that really drove home for me that Meg shared is about the importance of choosing to change. Meg reminded us that while others may guide us, mentor us, or influence us, at the end of the day, it is down to us to make the decision to shift our life. It's your decision to shift your life. That comes from within. Whether it's breaking family cycles, healing from trauma, or taking the first uncomfortable step towards something new. It all begins with a choice. I had a choice that January, back in 2023, when I was choosing, am I going to sit home and sulk in my misery, or am I going to experience breathwork detox with Meghan Escobar? You probably wouldn't be listening to me right now if I sulked in my sadness. That being said, we make choices every day. We make multiples of them. It all begins with a choice. Meg's story, my story, they are both living proof of how choices, no matter how hard, can lead to something beautiful. I had two choices that night of Mimi's anniversary. I could have smoked weed by myself and wallowed in self-pity, or I could have gone to this breathwork detox class. And I did the latter. I'd be okay if I did the first, but I would not have created the change and shifts that I have. I would not have shifted my mindset the way I have. I also loved how Meg talked about boundaries and pouring into yourself first. How many of us have been the rock for others, putting everyone else first while neglecting ourselves? Meg's journey reminded me how essential it is to show up for yourself. That's where the real growth and healing begins. And you can't be there or support other people, even her son, as she mentioned, if she is not pouring into her own cup. And y'all, let's not overlook the power and the magic of breathwork in Meg's story. To think that one virtual session could spark such profound transformation. It's a reminder that sometimes the smallest decisions can lead to the biggest breakthroughs. Meghan's courage to trust the process is such an inspiring example of what can happen when we listen to our gut and take the leap into the unknown. So much in life is unknown. Take the risk. If you're feeling stuck or weighed down by old patterns, take Meg's advice. Do the thing. Try the thing that scares you or feels unfamiliar or weird. Try the thing. What you're not changing, you're choosing. Whether it's breathwork, therapy, journaling, or something entirely different. Give yourself the chance to see life from a new perspective. What do you have to lose? You try therapy and it doesn't help. So you try something else. But if you try nothing, you're going to stay exactly where you are. Lastly, I want to leave you with one of my favorite moments from this conversation. When Meg said, what you're not changing, you're choosing. That hit so deep for me. And I think it's such a powerful takeaway for all of us. If something in your life isn't working, ask yourself, am I willing to keep choosing this? Or is it time to make a different choice? If Meg's story resonated with you, make sure to connect with her on Instagram at The Emotional Anchor. You can also friend her on Facebook, Meghan Escobar. If this episode moved you or sparked something inside of you, I encourage you to share this episode with someone you think needs to hear it. Don't forget to follow along, rate the podcast, leave a review. It helps Manders Mindset grow and get out to more and new people. And I'm trying to help people shift their mindsets and shift the way they look at and show up in the world. Because as always, if nothing changes, nothing changes. Thank you guys so much for spending time with me and tuning in to another episode of Manders Mindset. And as a reminder, Manders Mindset is going on hiatus from February 2nd until March 10th. March 10th, we will be back with a new episode. Manders is off to Bali, so stay tuned. March 10th, we'll be back. Thanks, guys. Until next time. In case no one told you today, I'm proud of you. I'm rooting for you. And you got this. As always, if you enjoyed the show, I would really appreciate it if you would leave me a 5-star rating, leave a review, and share it with anyone you think would benefit from this. And don't forget, you are only one mindset shift away from shifting your life. Thanks, guys. Until next time.